So we're moving quickly, like I had said earlier on, it's lunch time. But whilst lunch is going on, we're going to have a video about mental health. And the lady is my namesake, apparently. Her name is Mrs. Kehinde Akinbaleye. I hope I got that right. Mental health is real. It's in our community. We have friends, families who are facing this, and we need to talk more about it. So there's going to be a video from her talking about mental health. How can we identify the symptoms? How do we address it? And how do we navigate it? Do I have the video ready for her presentation while lunch is going on? Thank you.
Kehinde Akinbaleye is the founder of Reign with Purpose Health Services and a licensed clinical professional counselor with over 10 years of experience helping women and families thrive. Passionate about women's emotional and spiritual well being, she specializes in supporting women through anxiety, depression, trauma, infertility, pregnancy, and postpartum challenges, seasons that often feel overwhelming yet deeply shape identity and faith. With deep roots in Nigerian culture and faith, Kehinde understands the unique pressures women face, balancing tradition, faith, and personal dreams. She integrates biblical principles with practical evidence-based counseling tools, offering hope, healing, and empowerment. Her mission is to remind every woman that she is equipped, called, and capable of stepping fully into her God-given purpose.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be a part of this gathering today. I wanted to start with a simple thought. When someone has malaria, we're quick to get treatment, right? But when someone is anxious, depressed, or overwhelmed, the response is often different. We might hear things like, just pray about it, or don't worry, God will take control. Sometimes we might hear, I beg, oh, don't kill yourself, or you're not the first to experience this, you'll be okay. As mothers, we may even hear something like, you have to be strong for your kids. And of course, the infamous, it is well. The other day, someone sent me a screenshot on Instagram of an Instagram post saying, it is fine. Jesus wept too. I be you strong pastor, yigi yigi. I thought that was funny. Sisters, prayer and encouragement are powerful. But God also calls us to care for our minds. The Bible reminds us in Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Guarding our hearts includes guarding our mental health. We've all heard the saying, health is wealth. And that includes our emotional and mental well-being. That's what we'll explore together today. The importance of mental health for us as Christians. Since Proverbs tells us to guard our hearts because it determines the course of our lives, the question becomes, why should we even talk about mental health in the first place? Guarding our hearts means protecting our thoughts, our emotions, and mental health. According to World Health Organization, health is more than just the absence of disease. It also includes physical, social, and mental well-being. When our mental health is ignored, it affects how we think, how we relate to others, how productive we are as mothers, as wives, at work, in school, and even how we connect in God in prayer and worship. Ignoring our mental health is like ignoring malaria. It worsens over time. This is why talking about mental health is not optional, but it's essential. It's essential to living well and also fulfilling God's purpose in our lives. Now, you might wonder, if we have faith, shouldn't that be enough? Let's look at what the scripture shows us about believers who also struggled with their emotions. Let's look at Elijah, for example, in 1 Kings 19. After a great victory on Mount Carmel, anybody would have been excited, but we see Elijah suddenly collapsed emotionally. He ran into the wilderness, sat under a tree, and prayed. He told God, I have had enough. Just take my life. Now, as counselors, we use something called the DSM. This is a manual that doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, and the whole 9 yards. We usually would use this to identify mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth. If we compare Elijah's words and behaviors to the DSM today, and to how the DSM describes the symptoms of depression and anxiety, the overlap is clear. We see Elijah begging God to take his life. Example of what we look today as sadness and hopelessness, one of the symptoms of major depressive disorder. Loss of interest or pleasure. We see this when Elijah, after he won a victory, he had no joy or motivation. Exhaustion and fatigue. We see this when Elijah went and isolated himself and laid down and slept under the broom tree, feeling overwhelmed. Low self-worth or low self-esteem. He said, "I am no better than my ancestors." Thoughts of death. He told God directly to let him die. Elijah shows us that even God's prophets can experience what today we would call depression. And notice God's response. He didn't scold Elijah or dismiss him. He sent an angel and he sent food, water, rest. Then he reminded Elijah that he wasn't alone. God responded with care. Not condemnation, not minimization, not dismissal, but with care. Another prime example from the scripture is David. The scripture describes David as a man after God's own heart. And in Psalm 42, David goes, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me?" That's prime sadness and inner turmoil. He further goes, "My tears have been my food day and night." Crying, poor sleep, appetite changes. Those are examples of depression symptoms. He says, "My bone suffers mortal agony." This is physical pain linked to stress. "Why have you forgotten me?" Feelings of abandonment and worthlessness, or even feelings of isolation. In Psalm 55, David says, "My heart pounds in my chest. Fear and trembling overwhelm me. I can't stop shaking." These are classic anxiety symptoms: racing heart, fear, physical shaking. So, through the lens of the DSM, David shows signs of both depression and anxiety. Yet, what do we see? God allowed David to express these raw emotions, and many of his psalms that begin in despair and in renewed hope. David teaches us that it's okay to lament and pour our hearts out honestly to God, and at the same time, look forward to the hope that God has given to us. A final example, my absolute favorite, is Paul. In 2 Corinthians, Paul goes on and says, "I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan, torments me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.'" We don't know exactly what Paul's thorn was. Some think it's physical illness, others suggest it could have been something emotional or psychological distress, but we don't know. What we do know is that Paul described it as tormenting, ongoing, and painful. He prayed earnestly for relief, but the struggle remained. This mirrors what many people face today with chronic mental struggles, symptoms that don't disappear overnight. But Paul's testimony shows us that God's grace doesn't abandon us in those moments. His strength is made perfect in our weaknesses. Struggle and faith can coexist. Elijah, Paul, and David, prophet, king, apostle, every single one of these individuals, along with other people in the scripture, struggled in ways that align in what we call today as depression and anxiety or chronic distress. And in every case, God responded with compassion, provision, and grace. So what this tells us is that faith does not always have to cancel out our emotions. And because we're Christians, we have to be considerate of how our emotions impact our spiritual walk. So why does this matter? It matters because untreated mental issues affects things like marriages, parenting, our work performance, our physical health. There's been lots of studies that shows that increased stress, it puts one at a greater risk of hypertension and other physical diseases. So let's bring it home for a second. Here in Nigeria, we face unique pressures like economy pressures, family expectations, unemployment, the fast pace of life, societal stigma, the whole nine yard. But one of our biggest barriers is the stigma that's still attached to mental health. Many people keep silent because they don't want to be judged. But untreated struggles can lead to serious issues like high blood pressure, stroke, or even substance abuse. Do you know someone who has kept silent about their struggles because of stigma? Imagine how different their stories could be if they felt safe to speak, especially as Christians. So this is why mental health is a vital conversation for us as Nigerians and as Christians. So how can we recognize when someone is struggling or even when we ourselves are struggling? For many of us, depression doesn't always look like, what we see on TV or what we see in movies and stuff. Sometimes it looks like, saying my heart is heavy or I don't have strength or I'm just not feeling like myself these days. You may find yourself crying often and you just don't know why, or feeling weak or losing interest in things you once enjoyed. Depression can also show up in the body, whereby you start, just getting headaches, backaches, loss of appetite. You find yourself sleeping too much or not sleeping enough. Some women might even say, I just lie down and think throughout the night. Anxiety, on the other hand, often feels like constant worry. You're thinking about school fees, you're thinking about your children, you're thinking about your future, and your mind just is not settled. And physically, you may feel your heart is just pounding so fast, like it's about to jump out of your chest, or that your body is just shaking inside. Sleep doesn't come easily because, your thoughts is just running throughout the night. And sometimes these struggles show up spiritually. You may lose joy in prayer or even feel guilty thinking if I had more faith, I shouldn't be feeling this way. But I want you to know that having these struggles doesn't always mean that you're weak or that you're weak in faith. It just means that you're human. So if you see yourself in these examples, please don't keep silent. Talk to someone. Talk to someone you trust. Seek help. Mental health is part of health, and just like malaria, depression and anxiety can be treated. So, sisters, which of these signs sounds familiar to you? Do you see it in yourself? Do you see it in someone you know? Because recognizing them is the first step to getting support. Now, once you recognize them, the next step is learning how to care for our mental health. What are the day-to-day things that we can do so that we can prevent, depression and anxiety? The first is staying connected, building strong relationships, staying strong with your family, your community, your co-workers, neighbors, friends. Talking about your struggles reduces isolation and it also reduces the risk of depression. The second is balancing prayer and action. Prayer is powerful, but God also gives us resources like counselors, mentors, doctors. Using these things doesn't make you less spiritual, it makes you wise. And there's been a lot of studies that shows that a combination of faith and therapy improves recovery. So faith and action must go hand in hand. Beyond connection and prayer with action, there are also lifestyle habits and spiritual practices that renew our minds and strengthens us. Another way to stay healthy is through our daily lifestyle. Get enough sleep, eat a balanced diet, exercise regularly. These habits make you they may look simple, but they can also transform your mood and your energy. And spiritually, Romans 12:2 tells us, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing your mind can look like reading, listening to and meditating on scriptures, journaling, practicing gratitude. For example, waking up every morning and thanking God for what He will do that day, or reflecting on your day at the end of the day from a place of gratitude. And even using tools like cognitive behavioral strategies to challenge negative thinking, because what we think impacts how we feel and what we do. So I want you to do one thing. What's one small daily habit you can start this week to renew your mind? It might be a gratitude list, a short walk, or even just spending 5 minutes in the scriptures. Even with all of these healthy habits, sometimes we need extra support, and that's where seeking professional help makes a big difference. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we still need extra support, and that's okay. Getting professional help early, whether from counselor, a psychiatrist, a doctor, or just any professional, leads to better outcomes. Think of it this way. If you had some type of physical illness, you wouldn't hesitate to seek treatment. Mental health deserves the same urgency. Remember, professionals are also part of God's provision for healing. So if God has given us these resources, support systems, wisdom, and even professionals, what are responsibilities as Christians? As Christians, we're called to steward, to take care of our body, our mind, and our soul. John 10:10 says, "The thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose is to give you a rich and satisfying life." Abundant life is not just about money or success. It includes peace of mind, emotional stability, and joy in the spirit. So taking care of your mental health is part of that. So that leads us to our final thought. Let's pull all of this together. Remember what God is inviting us to do when it comes to our mental health. Don't keep silent. Take a step today. Remember, your mental health is as important as your physical health. Struggle is not weakness, and it's not a lack of faith. Now that you know the signs to look out for, you can look out for yourself and your sisters and brothers. And remember that God has called us to have an abundant life, and that also includes our emotional and mental health, mental well-being. So let's do our best to stay connected, take care of our body, our mind, and seek help as early as we can. Thank you.